taking water as well as electricity. Oh, okay. So it's $2.30, but to be considered lifted out of poverty, you have to be given assured free food, free clothing, just housing, which means that it's structurally sound, you have safe drinking water, you have that you're assured, you have clothing and food that you're assured, you have compulsory education, 9 years that you are assured, for free compulsory education, 9 years. And you also have medical services, so you have free medical services. All of those things we do not guarantee here, with the exception of free schooling. That's the only thing. I mean, we do have, we do have schooling. So again, this is why you cannot compare what we label as, poverty and what they label as poverty. It's not the same. And even if you do want to label it as the same, the World Bank labels extreme poverty as $1.90 per day. In China, even with all the programs that they have for free food, free clothing, free housing that has electricity and water, as well as free medical care, and also compulsory free education, they literally have a higher official poverty, extreme poverty line than the World Bank. World Bank's is $1.90 USD. China's is $2.30 USD. Like, even with that argument, it falls flat. Thanks for watching that episode of the Guide. It shows only positive reviews are huge, so please consider donating to the Venmo or PayPal or joining as a member of the Patreon.
This thing, that thing, everything. No. Catherine is the CEO of Capital. Now she has an extra $200. Your life, your money, your credit. Big Florida.
China has lifted roughly 850 million people out of what they define as extreme poverty over the past 40 years. The past 4 decades lifted 850 million people out of extreme poverty. Now, they specifically targeted areas where there were high amounts of extreme poverty, such as in Tibet, such as in Xinjiang. These rural regions where you had a lot of indigenous populations, right? They specifically, or I should say non-Han Chinese population, they specifically targeted these regions where there were high amounts of extreme poverty that were not highly industrialized by providing 5-year plans of economic investment and industrialization for these people. And it worked.
China's official poverty line is $2.30 per day.
But also, I might add that China does provide a lot more for their people. They do have different examples of the government, redistributing the wealth, nationalizing certain industries that we do not have here in the United States. For example, like with there was a lot of debate with actually the person that's Caleb just mentioned, Huey Long. There was a lot of debate. There were socialists and communists were not very happy with Huey Long. I mean, they obviously saw Huey Long as a far better alternative to FDR at the time, right? But they still had a lot of criticisms with Huey Long at that point in time. But Huey Long understood that just taxing the rich or just doing this or that is, like it's not going to be a solution to the issue. Just doing a New Deal is not going to be a solution to the issue. That's why what Huey Long wanted to do was create these different programs through the Share Our Wealth Act, which would have done a handful of different things, such as, guaranteeing household grants. He tried to do this in Louisiana too with the Louisiana Homestead Act. $5,000 household grants for all people. He wanted to do an annual minimum income of $3,000 for everybody, which would be $62,000 in today's standards. Free education, vocational training for students, farmer assistance, veterans benefits, public works, $30 per month pensions for seniors, which equates to $650 per day in today's standards. Month-long vacation for workers, and free medical care. See, in the United States, our economy is not really, you can't really compare the two economies and expect there to be, complete unison in how we look at, what the cost of living is, because our government gives us nothing. Like, our government gives us nothing, and then the alternatives that we do have to buy, take healthcare, for example. We not only have to buy our healthcare, but we have to pay the highest amount for healthcare of any country in the world per capita, of any country in the world, and we get some of the least amount of actual care in return. So, what's the saying? You're comparing apples to oranges. Now, extreme poverty is a specific designation that China has created, but you also have to understand, and if you listen to actual Chinese workers specifically, I mean, I've read testimonies from Uyghur workers who are working in Xinjiang who've explained that by gaining just like a few bucks a day, they can actually live a sustainable life. Like they can actually keep a roof over their head. They can pay for food. They can give their kids what they need to live a happy life. And so it's far different than what we have here in the United States. And you also have to understand just how poor these people were prior to having that $2.30 per day, as you put it, having a job.
In February of this year, the Chinese government celebrated the eradication of extreme poverty within its borders. Now, this would be a massive achievement for any country, but for China, even more so, as it's home to some 1.4 billion people and is considered a developing country. China's credited with lifting over 800 million people out of poverty, which accounts for 70% of the world's total poverty rate. This is a massive feat, and it's worth understanding how China did it. To do just that, I'm joined by James Chat, a researcher at the Tricontinental Institute, a member of the Dengsheng News Collective, and she's the lead author of a report titled Serve the People, the Eradication of Extreme Poverty in China, which everyone can go check out at the Tricontinental website.
In terms of how someone like her is defined to have lived in poverty and get lifted, as you asked. The program has a slogan, because here public policy often likes to use slogans with, kind of catchy phrases. So it's one income, two assurances, and three guarantees. What that is the first income. Obviously, that's still the primary measure of how a person is doing their income sources. Do they have work? So in China, the extreme poverty level is set at the equivalent of $2.30 a day. And this is, just so that you know, the World Bank uses $1.90 a day. So the China standard is actually a bit higher than that.
So the World Bank qualifies extreme poverty as $1.90. So for all the countries that the U.S. has basically cut into doing business with the World Bank, I'm assuming with the IMF as well, they say that they label extreme poverty. So they base all of their, I'm sure, historic achievements off of the basis of extreme poverty being labeled at $1.90 per day. And someone in my chat sent me something that said, well, it's not that hard to lift people out of extreme poverty when that line is at $2.30 USD per day. So what you're saying is that the World Bank actually has a less strict line, and this is probably what the United States utilizes to dictate, how much they're helping people, their, puppet states across the globe. They actually have a much lower, not just a little bit, but a much lower extreme poverty line, daily extreme poverty line than China does.
But the Chinese approach wasn't just around income alone. I think what's more important to focus is these two other aspects I mentioned. The two assurances, which is that you don't have to worry about food and clothing.
Oh, they don't have to worry about food and clothing. I wonder if the World Bank takes that into account. I wonder if the World Bank takes food and clothing into account, free food and clothing for all the countries that they live in. I know I mentioned that China is not a comparable example because they have other programs that they have created to, aid the citizenry of their country that we do not have here. And in fact, we are probably the most fucked country when it comes to basic, governmental programs. But yes, this is a perfect example. The two assurances are that you will not have to worry about food or clothing. We have to worry about food and clothing, and we pay some of the most in the world for this.
And the three guarantees, which is that you are provided basic medical services, free and compulsory education, which in China is 9 years, and then safe housing. And they define safe housing as not only the structure of the housing, but that it has safe drinking water as well as electricity.
Oh, okay. So it's $2.30, but to be considered lifted out of poverty, you have to be given assured free food, free clothing, just housing, which means that it's structurally sound, you have safe drinking water, you have that you're assured, you have clothing and food that you're assured, you have compulsory education, 9 years that you are assured for free compulsory education, 9 years, and you also have medical services, so you have free medical services. All of those things we do not guarantee here, with the exception of free schooling. That's the only thing. I mean, we do have schooling. So again, this is why you cannot compare what we label as poverty and what they label as poverty. It's not the same. And even if you do want to label it as the same, the World Bank labels extreme poverty as $1.90 per day. In China, even with the programs that they have for free food, free clothing, free housing, there's electricity and water, as well as free medical care, and also compulsory free education, they literally have a higher official extreme poverty line than the World Bank. World Bank's is $1.90 USD. China's is $2.30 per day USD. So, even with that argument, it falls flat. Thanks for watching that episode of The Dive. This show is only possible thanks to the support of viewers like you. So please consider.
All right, that was uncopyrighted music. So that's that simple. Some nice uncopyrighted music I'm allowed to jam to, called Blazing Hits Uncopyrighted. So let's hit it up. Stony Progressive. Starting this night out. First of all, wanted to start doing a lot more of the Jen Psaki White House press briefings in the beginning here, but her press briefings today was just pretty much softball, pre-approved questions about Russia and Ukraine with a few COVID questions. There was one good bit. If I have energy, maybe we'll get to it, about her attack of crime was just gun bill, which was kind of upsetting in both the way it was asked and the way it was defended. But that is not on the first of the list of agenda. I think we're going to attack Biden second here. He put out something today, and I haven't watched Biden and a full Biden rant in quite a while, so I think we should do that. But first off, most importantly, Sabby Sabs, fantastic contributor, part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. She does a women's panel on the last Sunday of third Sunday of the month, or she has a all women's panel, all women of color panel. They had a Green Party governor candidate for Texas, and then mostly women activists and YouTubers. And this was a great segment today, so I think we need to watch at least the highlighted best clip I could find. We'll watch that few minutes there, and then we can move on. But I'm just going to react, and let's burn one down. Stony Progressive style. We can burn through some news after this. But protest rallies and listening to people and concerns are primary objective of this show. So let us
open this up
burn
to
one down,
the
guys.
panel. When we talk about intersectionality, what are some of the experiences that you may have had in your own lives with intersectionality? I'll go ahead and start in order, so I'll go with the Finney.
Yeah, I've been reading the chat, and I'm gonna just keep it a whole stack. Like I feel like a lot of the reason why I backed away from the public is because I feel like a lot of my opinions are extremely unpopular. But let me say it like this: I cannot separate my identities. I cannot just be Black. I cannot just be a woman. I cannot just be a lesbian. I am a Black queer woman at all times. So even through my organizing and my advocacy, my organizing is a reflection of who I am, right? So when I see people in the chat saying, oh, like, why can't we all just transcend race and, just all come together and fight the oppressors? Cool. You know what I'm saying? But that's the problem when people don't understand intersectionality. Because you are telling me that I have to, yet again, concede a part of my identity in order to be in community with you. And that ain't it, period. Like, I can stand in solidarity with you, but that me standing in solidarity with working class white people, let's be very clear, is like minimum wage increases. That's like universal health care. You know what I'm saying? Like, those things are standing in solidarity with white people. To stand in solidarity with me, there are a lot of things that we needed to fight for that white people ain't going to be affected by, period. Y'all not going to benefit from it. Y'all not going to get a crumb of it. It's not for you. You see what I'm saying? We're going to girl boss gatekeep that. You see what I'm saying? So, Like, if I'm going to be a Black queer woman, I'm always going to be a Black queer woman. I'm always going to organize for all parts of my identity, for all parts of myself and all of my different intersections. And I would really appreciate it if people would do a better job at understanding what they're saying when they say it. Because when you tell me that I should just get over it and, you know, like we should all just pull ourselves up and organize for against the 1%, we should do that. But we should also organize reparations, which white people are not going to benefit from. We should also organize for federal legislation where Black people will not be discriminated against because of their hair, because of the way they talk, because of their names on job applications. Like, that's what I mean. That's what I mean by it's different. So, you know, people want to call it like oppression in Olympics. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that true justice for me looks different than true justice for you, because our identities, our lives are different. Period.
Always.
Courtney and Keisha?
I mean, it's like a word from Afeni. I mean, the conceding, I think that that's the biggest point, like something that I can connect with so well is it's oftentimes that we are asked to concede parts of ourselves for other people's comfort. And I feel like a lot of times as a woman, you know, you're asked to do that, to just, suppress yourself or whatever that is. And I mean, I'm like Afeni. I'm really like, whatever, this is what the fuck I need. I'm going to talk about that. Because it's crazy. Even starting a YouTube channel like we have, you know, you're like, oh, are we supposed to talk about Black stuff? It's like, well, what else will we talk about? It just naturally comes up because that affects our lives. And then you have to think, oh, we're gonna get this count, this whatever. It's just very interesting, like how much people ask of you for their own comfort. And that's the part of intersectionality that I've always run up with, is just like, oh, can you be like a little bit less assertive or a little bit less this, or not bring up the Black part of this? And it's like, well, I'm still involved in this situation, so I do need representation from myself. And I feel like they always turn it into kind of being a victim. Like, that's a part that really gets to me. It's just like, oh, well, you're making yourself a victim if you need that much attention. And it's like, no, I need that support in a different way.
I think the allyship is like something that we were just talking about this the other day. Like, where is the allyship? Like, I'm here to support you and everything that you want to do. And, you know, like, I'm all about it. No problem. I feel like we are constantly showing up for other people. But when we say what our issues are, it's there's always a question. There's always a, oh, well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe it's because of that. It's never
100% support. Support everybody. Jesus, don't pick and choose. There's blind spots, and if you didn't see something, it doesn't mean it's not supporting. It means it's your blind spot. You need to wake up.
Never just a straight up, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. You know, I can clearly see that, you know, these are the issues and that's why that happened to you, without any question. I mean, and that's just another layer of exhaustion too, that you have to not only experience all these terrible things we experience as Black women, but then on top of that, you have to explain yourself and prove that it really happened to you. So, I mean, for me, allyship would be something that if people could be serious about really helping us and really listening to our problems, that would be.
And like Afeni said, like, a lot of it might not affect you, but
it's not.
You need to be for the betterment of me. Period.
Right, exactly. We're for things that are not going to affect us.
So where's that? Where's that connection?
Kim?
So I happen to stand at the intersection of a Black disabled woman. And, you know, when we talk about intersectionality, I am comfortable being a Black disabled woman. It is my place in capitalism and in this white supremacist patriarchal nation that we exist in. That's what makes being a Black disabled woman uncomfortable, right? Because of all the targeted discrimination and misogynoir and ableism specifically that disabled people encounter. And, you know, as Black women, because of our status in the social hierarchy, intentionally put at or near the bottom, we are forced to always center other people's comfort, be it the comfort of white people or the comfort of men or the comfort of rich people, to the detriment of our own, right? We have to make sure that other people are taken care of before our own needs are even addressed or even thought of. So I want to emphasize this more so from a disability perspective as well, because my disability is progressive. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's invisible, but it wasn't something that I grew up with. It is something that has happened to me as an adult. And as I experience this journey, I am made very, very, very aware of the inaccessibility that continues to exist in this country, specifically in the level of ableism. And as we are dealing with this COVID pandemic, tragically, not only has it taken 1 million people from this country, 1 million people from their loved ones here just in the US, but this is a mass disability event. People who have contracted COVID and who have survived COVID are dealing with ongoing chronic conditions that they previously did not have. And I think it's so important that we have to do what we can to advocate for policies and elect people that are going to implement these policies that emphasize the necessity of nationalized healthcare, because we have a lot of people who are going to be recovering from COVID, who are going to be newly disabled, a lot of kids as well. We still don't know what the ongoing effect. Oh, I'm sorry, Sabby. I didn't realize that COVID is something I should not have been saying. But there's a lot of ripple effects that continue to go on from this massive health crisis and pandemic that we're still dealing with. So as a Black disabled woman, I feel like I see these issues extremely clearly because of where I am on the social hierarchy. I'm at the bottom looking up, so I can see everybody. Not everybody looks down and can see me.
Okay, those were, 3 pretty powerful in a row, so I wanted to leave it there. That is a 2-hour interview clip, roundtable, however you want to call it, but it is absolutely worth a watch. That is Sabby Sab's channel and the Ethnic Women's Liberation episode 2. They had one last month and this month as well, and Sabby does a great job moderating and puts together a pretty impactful panel. And I don't have much to say on the topic, so I just wanted to, I watched that tonight and thought it was absolutely worth a share. I have not seen this bit, and I say bit like, because this guy's a clown. Kind of reminds me of the Joker, big smile, and, I'm the Joker. Dick Cheney was the Penguin, and, we got all the bad guys, and I've done the bit. Let's do it again, but let's do Biden.
Let's have a cabinet meeting. Really, thank you for what you all are doing. We've got a lot more good things to do as well. Back in July, I signed, as you all know, an executive order to promote competition and build an economy that works for everybody, not just a few. And competition results in lower prices for families. Competition results in fair wages for workers. And as you all know, competition encourages companies to innovate. And but what we've seen over the last few decades is less competition and more concentration that literally holds the economy back. And in too many industries,
And you've been in Congress for 40, or Senate for 40, you've been in DC for 40 years. You were part of all of this, and it's a slow progression, not like a one-term to one-term thing. I'm going to say this all the time. It is not one-term to one-term. This is a slow progression.
Full of giant companies dominate the entire market. And we see it in big ag. I need not tell the Secretary of Agriculture that. He's forgotten more about this than I know. And big tech, big pharma, the list goes on. And rather than competing for customers, they're consuming their competitors. And rather than doing what they should be doing, they're doing the opposite, having a negative impact. All told, between generating higher prices and lower wages, lack of competition costs the median American family household, according to a study done at NYU, $5,000 a year, the median income family. My executive order is changing that, as everyone at this table knows. It included 72 specific actions. for federal agencies to take and help restore competition in our economy. It includes creating a competition council, y'all, and comprised of cabinet members and heads of several independent agencies to coordinate and monitor our progress all across the entire federal government.
Oh my goodness.
In 6 months since I issued the order, we've met every deadline that my order called for so far. And here are just 3 examples. The right to repair sounds kind of silly saying it that way, but it's what we call it, the right to repair is literal. Too many areas, if you don't own a product, if you own a product, from a smartphone to a tractor.
I know this family's rich and powerful, but do we have to let Grandpa be president? Like, first we had grumpy Grandpa, and now we have senile Grandpa. Can we get somebody back there, like, in the prime of their, like, intelligence and can at least lie to us correctly?
You don't have the freedom to choose how or where to repair that item you purchased. It's broke. Well, what do I do about it? If it's broke, you had to go to the dealer and you had to pay the dealer's cost, the dealer's price. If you tried to get it fixed, if you tried to fix it yourself, some manufacturers actually would void the warranty when they sold the vehicle, sold the product to you, or disable the features on that product they sold to you. Denying the right to repair raises prices for consumers, means independent repair shops can't compete for your business. And my executive order announced that support for the right to repair. Rather, right after I issued my order, I was pleased to see the Federal Trade Commission unanimously announced it would ramp up enforcement against illegal repair restrictions. That was allowed by major companies by voluntarily agreeing to change their restrictions on repairs. And what happened was a lot of these companies said, you're right, we're going to voluntarily do it. You don't have to order us to do it, and voluntarily said, we'll do it. For example, Apple and Microsoft are changing their policies so folks will be able to repair their phones and laptops themselves, although I'm not sure I know how to do that.
Is there any question of competence in this guy?
When I have any problem with my phone, I call my daughter. But it's going to make it easier for millions of Americans to repair their electronics instead of paying an arm and a leg to repair or just throwing the device out. Hearing aids. Roughly 48 million people suffer from hearing loss in America, 48 million. But to get a hearing aid, folks have to go see a specialist and then get a prescription. And then they pay thousands of dollars for a pair of hearing aids. But the big part is that's a big part of why only 1 in 5 people who could benefit from a hearing aid actually use one. And so my competition executive order changes that. In October, the Food and Drug Administration released a new proposal rule that would make it possible for hearing aids to be sold over the counter without a prescription. We expect this is going to lower costs for hearing aids from thousands of dollars to literally to hundreds of dollars, saving people hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And people can pick them up at a local pharmacy, saving time and money.
Do they make him read this, like, for the first time in front of everybody? Or has he got a chance to rehearse? Did he have this with his 20 Adderall and 15 coffees to get up here and do this? I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, just, did the electoral, really decide this guy? You know, it wasn't some sham of a primary into a sham of an election, possibly. I have no clue of what happens in our electoral anymore because they stopped taking polling. They stopped even counting the polling because they were not matching up, so they just stop it. If other countries did that, they'd shut the whole thing down.
And helping the tens of million people with hearing loss who don't have hearing aids now. Third area, mergers. In too many industries, big companies can use their power to squeeze out smaller competitors, stifle new competition, raise prices, reduce the choice for customers, and exploit their workers. Well, I've said it before. Capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's exploitation. So the Department of Justice and other agencies with oversight authority have ramped up their efforts to scrutinize these mergers. It includes challenging or blocking mergers that are bad for the economy and your pocketbooks. For example, the Department of Justice just took action to block a mega merger that would have resulted in 2 brokerages dominating the insurance industry, which would result in customers having fewer choices.
It's like, there's like 4 countries, four companies in America. Oh, competition. There's 4 companies and they're mostly like regionally pushed and distinct, and they don't really compete with each other. It's like they have like an overlap. There's like 2 per region. That's competition.
Higher prices and lower quality services. The bottom line, this isn't just about quick wins. It's about reversing decades of concentration that have hurt workers, consumers, and small businesses. It didn't happen at any one time.
You helped do this over decades.
It's been over a period of time now, a long time. This is just the beginning, though. In the coming weeks and months, Americans can expect to see more protections for farmers and ranchers, selling products like beef, pork, and poultry, more options and better prices for consumers, more clarity in the actual price you'll pay for high-speed internet.
First of all, beef, poultry, and pork are not based on supply and demand. We give them subsidies just like we give corn and soy. So the price is already not according to the supply-demand curve. So the only way we're going to lower those prices is if we give more subsidies to those companies. Which, guess what? They're not going to go to the workers. They're not going to go to the mid-level. They're going to go all the way to the top. That's just an abstraction of wealth to a certain business. That's all it is.
Internet services and airline tickets. We're also going to keep pushing on other priorities from my executive order, like addressing the non-compete clauses that affect 1 in 5 workers. 1 in 5 workers have to sign a non-compete clause. It stunned me. That's how this, as Brian will tell, this is how this came about, really, this whole competitive council. I knew all was going on, but when I realized...
You've literally been in D.C. for the last 40 years. And whoa, I didn't even know this was going on.
How many people out there with no special insight to having access to patents or anything else had to sign a non-compete clause? People making hourly wages, all designed to keep prices down, keep wages down and prices up.
You had no idea this was going on. That's ridiculous.
But 1 in 5 workers had to gave them, the company, the power over their careers. The bottom line is our economy shouldn't be about people working for capitalism. It should be about capitalism working for people, for everyone. Now I'm going to turn this over to Brian so we can get this meeting started. But again, thank each and every one of you here on this council. I really mean it. You know, I think even when we decided to do this council, some of you all thought it was a good idea, but I'd be surprised if some of you didn't go, whoa, I didn't realize how restrictive some of this was. How restrictive some of this was. But you're going to make a difference in ordinary people's lives. Ordinary people's lives are going to make a difference. So anyway, Brian, the floor is yours.
I'd like to know how many times he says this is going to help middle America, everyday people, normal people, like different ways he says that, because nothing they do actually does. Nothing changes around here as normal people. 80% just abstraction. But thank you for thinking of us, I guess. That's very kind. Very kind. All right, well, let's give this little gap in here so I can trim it. We'll move on. Do our politician of the week. I can't get my other page to open, so we will not be doing the videos in between so I can load a second candidate till I can update this, I guess, again. And I just went through an update, so I'm not sure what that deleted or I'm missing now, but I will do another update, and tomorrow we will do 2, but today let's just do 1. And I looked up, I looked up on YouTube the most recent video from a politician, and this was the guy. So, Georgia, the first district, Republican Earl Buddy Carter. He goes by Buddy Carter, which is just fantastic. The contract, the Honorable Earl Buddy Carter, which when I hear that, I think he must have been a judge, right? Because Honorable Earl Buddy Carter. No, he's a pharmacist. He is a pharmacist, just so we know that. 202, let's get his face on there too. Make sure you can see the face while I say this. Buddy Carter, his DC number, 202-225-5831. 202-225-5831. Give him a call if he's in your district and he's not representing you properly. It's the only way they pay attention. All right, so he's on the Committee of Energy and Commerce, so he must have a little power. That's a pretty important committee. And then the Committee on the Budget. So again, he must have some power. I know I've heard the name. And on the climate crisis, which I don't know if that's supposed to be irony, but when you see a Georgia person on for climate crisis, a Republican, I don't know. They just don't typically. He does on the coast here, Savannah and South. So maybe maybe on the coast people have a little more represented right there on the southern coast there by Jacksonville, Florida guys. So what a little bit about him. As I always like to do, I want to know the donors. That's the state senate, so let's go right to his contributors. And the scariest thing I always think, if I see one of the big 4 defense contractors, what's the big 4? Well, General Dynamics, his number 2 contributor is one of them. Whenever I see one of the big 4 as your top contributors, and I believe it was Lockheed Martin. There's another one. Didn't get Halliburton, huh? That's sad. I'm sorry. Halliburton and Boeing missing out. But General Dynamics right there at the top. Rite Aid Corp right on the top as well. So Big Pharma and General Dynamics, a war corporation. Interesting that he did not get onto an international committee with the war there, but the budget, got to have budget people to keep going with war, never-ending war. So yeah, he is a General Dynamics contributor. So if he is your Congress member, please do not, feel free to call him and make sure they know that you are anti-war when these wars come up here against Ukraine, against Venezuela, against whoever we might decide to start bombing very soon, because we need to be at war at all times. And this congressman is a war person, so you don't get that as a top contributor if you're okay with peace and harmony in the world. So a little bit about Earl Carter, also known as Buddy. The U.S. House Representative is doing Georgia's first congressional district, Republican Party, and has been in since 2015, but has been in running, so was a mayor of Pooler, Georgia from 96 to 2005. Before that was 4 years on the city council. And then Georgia House of Representatives, 2005 to 2009. So really a career politician when you look at this. He's been in politics for, 94, so 27 years. It was about a decade after college that he went right into it. So now resides in Savannah, beautiful area. I understand it. I did not know it was Republican area, so I might not be considering you for my next home. Thank you, district. When you looked at the races he's recently had, he absolutely killed it. So not somewhere that anyone's going to take over anytime soon. and votes pretty much, when you look at the key votes for the last 3 or 4 years, as almost every congressional member goes, it's completely partisan. There's no actual debate. There's no actual personal opinions aside. You have a few people just trying to, increase their name, increase their wealth, and make a few public displays that get them a lot of airtime. Because getting you airtime gets you further along. And I've heard of this person's name, so let's see how further along they go. Georgia is a state that's way behind on this, so it was not a surprise to me that as the Stony Progressive likes to start checking out here, completely against all cannabis. Does not want to end cannabis prohibition, does not want to expend cannabis convictions, doesn't want to reinvest in communities, allow cannabis to use banks, allow VA doctors to recommend medical cannabis. That's always the one that's like, screw you, you love our vets, but you won't let them use medical marijuana to help their PTSD. You're an asshole. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. You're owned by General Dynamics, you're for war, but you're not for the vets, really. Oh, we should probably look at him, huh? I don't really know the guy, so let's take a little. Like I said, first video I found.
Championship football team. At least he didn't wear a red jacket. 2 minutes to Mr. Carter.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and for hosting this. Madam Speaker, Joe Biden's first year in office has exceeded all expectations. In 365 short days, Joe Biden has managed to inflict an entire term of pain and hardship on the American people. Grocery store shelves are empty. Prices are up 7% nationwide. Gas costs $1 more per gallon today than it did when Biden took office. Americans lost the equivalent of 2 paychecks last year, and Biden has failed to add one single job from our 2019 high. In fact, Madam Speaker, only one thing has gone down in price during this administration, and that's the price of fentanyl. That's the price of fentanyl. Because of the fentanyl that's coming across the southern border. Washington Democrats.
Nope. Northern border, Europe, and our own freaking prescriptions, mostly. But thank you, you liar. And
we're counting on Joe Biden to socialize our economy, and boy, did he deliver. His administration caved to teachers' unions.
What?
Putting the wants of liberal elites ahead of the needs of our children who are desperate for high-quality in-person learning. Domestic terrorist. That is how his administration labeled parents who want better for their children in virtual learning. It's despicable. He caved to Russia, gutting the Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office, but allowing the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to push ahead virtually unchecked. He caved to Fauci, who kept his job despite lying to Congress about gain-of-function research. You know, who isn't caving? Senator Manchin, the Supreme Court, and Republicans across the nation who are fed up with this administration's singular focus on stripping rights and opportunities away from Americans. This administration has more than earned its 33% approval rating, and I hope, for the sake of our country, that the next 3 years are nothing like this one we have endured.
He's right, we're annoyed, but we're annoyed with all of them, not just the top head freaking senile old man at top. A, he doesn't have anything to do with the inflation boost that oil companies and everything else around us has happened. So that's ridiculous. B, that's ridiculous. C, he is the just old figurehead. There's so much other things happening. And whenever you point the head at one person, you got 4 pointing back at you, you jerk. All right, I hate him already. That's fantastic. I was going to do this. This is my first time ever. I got to give it a shot. Let's see how many minutes I can take. I'm hoping for 3. All right, let's do this. 3 minutes of OAN and this guy. The guy that 2 minutes already had me yelling. All right, let's do this.
To weigh in, representing Georgia's 1st congressional district, Congressman Buddy Carter. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Okay, I'm done. All right, that was it. All right. Oh, good times. Good times. We should do it again sometime. Not today. All right, let's
So,
go.
Congressman, as you may have heard, in New Mexico, they are calling on the National Guard to help schools stay open during this COVID Omicron surge. That being said, it's kind of incredible that we're at this point, considering in other states, things are running completely fine at schools, like Florida, for example, and so on. I mean, it just seems kind of excessive and extreme, and you have to wonder, like, why is it that there are so many teachers out of school? And then, and according to their logic, Omicron's so bad, then why would they send in the National Guard to do their jobs for them?
Well, those are all valid points and certainly something that needs to be considered. I mean, why are we having to reach this point where we're using National Guard, which, you know, I'm sure they're qualified. I'm sure that they'll do an adequate job. But at the same time, where are the teachers and why are they not there? And I think it's.
Why are you on this network that is literally filled with propaganda and bullshit and can't verify 70% of their stories with secondary sources and use anonymous sources for most of their sourcing? Are you kidding me? All right, that was enough. That was fun. Do it again sometime. Not doing that again. Nope, nope, nope. All right. So let's clean the palate. Whew. All right. All right. Good job, buddy Carter. You went on OAN to talk. That's ridiculous. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. Woke up the dog. See, that's just, come on, guy. Getting more awake now. So Rad Denny Media check-in. Gotta check it out this week, guys. Like I say, gotta give it a regular shot because it's a good way to get tons of independent news sources done by Lee Camp, Eleanor Goldfield. Trying to read and talk, and it's not working, so let's not do that right now. Give one peek in. One today, okay. I didn't know he pledged that, but if Biden did pledge to end the federal death penalty, I think he should, because the Fed should not be killing people. Let's just stick with that. The Fed should not be killing people. Not in random drone bombs, not in our own prisons, not in some secret prisons. We should not be killing people. That should be the goal of our government. Not in allowing people to frack our waters, poison our waters for gas, poison our airs for oil companies in Louisiana. We should not be doing that. Letting people's, buildings get so decrepit that they burn and kill innocent people. We should not be doing that. That should not be the role of our government. So, Rad with Indie Media, always worth a check-in. And going back to Brussels and protests, I wanted to check out protests today, and I was like, oh, this is a really cool site. It shows some protests over the country, and I looked at America, and it just sat so wrong with me. I'm like, oh, this is interesting and fun to read, but America, we have a handful, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure this is like a 2-year period that we've had more than a handful of protests. So the very first one, the electoral protest from November 2020, allegations leveled by President Donald Trump and his allies that vote counts were inaccurate and that there had been significant voter fraud. Police brutality protest in May of 2020. Prison protest in April of 2020. So this is, a couple years worth of protests here. But there's, I don't know, maybe 8, I think, if I counted right. 8 that they connect all to DC. The rest of the country here completely empty. Now, granted, they do give the Black Lives Matter protest 1 million people, so I guess they just counted it for DC. But if you're going to count just DC, then you might need to add another, I don't know, if you're going to look at that back to 2017, you might want to add another like 5,000 protests. Maybe something like that. Okay? Because, yeah. Well, you have to remember, and it's just Canadian, capital, so if you're going to only do the capital, and it's only going to be just the one place to represent the country, you might need to put another couple thousand on there for America. You definitely have more protests than that. But it is from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And Carnegie, I think of Carnegie as just, fantastic name of billionaire families that they've deleted their names so they could hide their wealth and probably have it in just about everything. So they got to pretend to be peaceful. And this site I found just, it did not help me for rallies and protests. And, it gave me some light reading on other countries and kind of helped me remind me of some of the things that have happened in the past that you hear about and you just forget because there's so many of these occurrences. But if there's only 8 in America since back to 2017, I don't think this is a reliable source. So don't have to go back there again. That was good times. But I was going through my saved video clips and found one that I never watched, and I guess I saved it and was planning on watching it another day back when I was poor and working every job I could work. So let's give it a watch today, huh? Jimmy Dore, 5 years later, 5 years and a quarter later, whatever.
Together, they're reconfiguring. They had a big meeting, and they came together. They decided to do everything exactly the same. I'm not shitting. I'm here with comedian Ron Placone, Steph Zamorano, and Hank Thompson. And this, so I'm not, you think I'm kidding. They had a big meeting with George Soros, and all the donors were at the meeting. I mean, not all the donors. There were donors at the meeting, George Soros being the biggest one. Let's see. This is what they say. Pro-Clinton establishment Democrats need to cede their stranglehold over the Democratic Party to the progressive base of Sanders supporters and disavow, depending on big money to get them through these hard times. Yes, that's what they need to do. So they need to have a distinction between the Democrats and the Republicans. They need to actually be two separate parties. They need to actually have two separate agendas. They actually have to represent two different groups of people. They actually have to represent two different interest groups. The Democrats need to represent working people.
The Democrats represent the AIPAC. Republicans represent NRA. There's your two groups. Besides that, they share all the same people. All the same.
And the Republicans always represented money and power and corporations. And so that's not a bad thing because you need to have that. But the problem is the Democrats, ever since Bill Clinton and Al Gore took over the party, they turned their back on working people, African Americans, workers, unions. They did. That's not hyperbole. They totally did on purpose. And they got in bed with Wall Street and Silicon Valley and big oil and fossil fuels and big pharma. That happened. And so right now they're saying that, and then what happens? They lose. Barack Obama was able to paper over the deficiencies in the Democratic platform and their policies. He was able to paper over the fact that Democrats had turned their backs because we just went through 8 years of Dick Cheney and George Bush literally ordering torture and illegally invading the world, right? So it wasn't. And then Barack Obama is such a pretty face and he talks so pretty. He really makes you forget it. He seems so decent. He knows all the words of liberalism. He knows all the words of populism. Of course, he then goes in and he legislates like a corporatist, which is what he did, which is why he had less people vote for him in 2012 than he had in 2008, and which is why Hillary Clinton lost to an orange clown. That happened. They literally lost to a guy you couldn't, they literally, who wouldn't they have lost to? I can't even think of a bigger joke in the country that they could lose to. I'm trying to think of a bigger joke. I can't think of one. Louis Gohmert wouldn't have been as bad as Donald Trump. They would have lost to Louis Gohmert. So here we go. The article goes on. If they fail to do this, the Democratic Party will continue its self-destructive trend in abandoning the working and middle class to serve the interests of corp. Yes, so now we have two parties doing that. That's what Ralph Nader said. Why are people pretending like this isn't happening? Why are people pretending like they don't know the problem? Still, they're pretending they don't know the problem. Hillary Clinton lost because Donald Trump was a strong personality. You know who else is a strong personality? Chuck Manson. He's not winning elections. And Democrats will continue to lose elections while they meet with their oblivious wealthy donors wondering why and where it all went wrong. Right now, Democrats should be working to ensure President Obama focuses on progressive policies that will likely suffer or become grossly neglected under a Trump presidency, and mobilizing a progressive base to hold Trump accountable throughout his presidency. That's not what Barack Obama's doing. Barack Obama's handing over to Donald Tiny Hands Trump the surveillance state. He's handing it over. No habeas corpus. The surveillance state. So now when Donald Trump's running for president, he's going to be able to look at the emails, phone records of all his opponents. You don't think they're going to do that? But instead of holding Obama accountable for a progressive agenda before he leaves office, which is what we should be doing, which is what I'm doing, which is what no one else seems to be doing, or focusing on fixing the DNC, celebrities in the mainstream media are distracting voters by blowing up the narrative of this impending sense of doom incited by a Trump presidency to avoid being held accountable themselves. I don't know if I totally agree with all that. Politico also reported that rather than focus on serving the working and middle class, Democrats are holding a closed-door meeting with wealthy Democratic Party donors, including billionaire George Soros.
Because that worked so great on the campaign trail for Hillary Clinton. That was so good when she was having those $2,700 dinners instead of showing up in states she needed to win. Worked so well for her.
The planning, Hank?
No, I was just thinking, like, maybe Kissinger came. You know, maybe he showed up, brought some sandwiches, new recipe or something.
They're planning the Democratic Party's strategy moving forward. Once again, abandoning voters' interests in favor of donors. They're doing it frickin' again.
And they will do it again in 2024.
The answer the Democratic Party is looking for won't be found in providing further influence for millionaires and billionaires. Yet that's where Senator Warren, Representative Nancy Pelosi, and the likely new DNC chair, Representative Keith Ellison, will be making appearances. The 3-day meeting is being hosted by the Democracy Alliance, an elite Democratic finance circle, which has significantly influenced institutions on the left and played a major role in propping up Clinton's candidacy, meaning they have played a major role in ruining the country and the Democratic Party.
Oh, so now I know who to really blame for this mess.
So now we need to immediately snap into action and have a meeting with those guys.
This must be before the leaks, and we know that, like, they did the whole thing. They set that whole thing up. These are just little bits before the whole big old leak, where we know all the horrible things they did in the primary and just let them get away with it.
Guys, see what they want to do.
What's next?
The excessive power wealthy donors wield inside the Democratic Party is a key reason why Clinton lost and voters have left. It is. But establishment Democrats appear more than willing to repeat their same mistakes. Not only that, they seem determined to do it again.
Well, there's no acknowledgement that they lost.
It's like they won't even acknowledge that they have a failed ideology of moving to the right to win votes.
I wonder if Jimmy knows he can just replay this every single election for the next, just every single election. This is just a continual thing since they split the two parties in the same party. Maybe, what, the 50s?
What Hillary Clinton did was move to the right to win votes. Bill Clinton, Al Gore, moved to the right to win votes. And so now it's failed. They moved to the right and they lost to Donnie Tiny-Hands Trump, which crushed their down ballots also. They had no voter turnout. There was no one. I believe that she can win. I believe that I say Hillary, you say fire.
Fire.
Remember that?
Oh, I didn't think we were doing this.
Remember that video? No. Zero enthusiasm for neoliberal politics. Who the fuck is a fan of that stuff except people in power?
I'm so happy I don't remember that. If I'm going to forget things about that election, that should definitely be whatever just happened there. That's not worth remembering.
There's nobody who likes neoliberalism except people in power or people, owners, the owner class, the people who own patents, the people who own corporations, and the politicians who take their money. That's neoliberalism.
That sounds like some trumped up trickle down.
Trumped up trickle down.
We gotta bring that back.
Yeah, I remember that though.
Here's the thing. I attended Indiana University, a Big Ten school. Their football team is never one of the better ones. And whenever they upset a fellow Big Ten school that has a better football team, if you look on the sideline of the opposing teams, you see a coaching staff with a look on their face wondering, where am I going to work next year? Everybody on the DNC should have that look on their face right now, but none of them do.
They're doubling down. It wasn't their fault. They've learned nothing. Karen Finney, who's the chief strategist for Hillary Clinton.
Debbie Feinstein, who completely messed that whole thing up, is still sitting behind AOC and all these other people I've done videos on. She's still in the background, right behind them. Still has power. Even though she completely caught stealing a primary, rigging it, that's her job. So she isn't actually, she did her job, and they promoted her for it. Even though she was kicked off her seat, she got better seats. No accountability.
There's an article in Media today about how she's blaming sexism and Bernie Bros on the loss. So people got mad at me for not wanting to bat Keith Ellison. I think the problem is the DNC. I think people go, oh, you want to burn it down? I don't think there's anything left to save.
Why are they saying that that's a bad thing?
Burn it down. I think we need to start a new campaign. I need a new party.
Yes.
Our party's going to be filled with Chuck Schumers and Karen Finneys and Nancy Pelosi's and corporatists.
You do help to start a new party, buddy. People's Party. A actual left party. Although I guess there's a Green Party too. There's them, there's things with everybody, and as I'll say before, I'll say it again. I say vote another party. Don't vote left or right. Don't vote Democratic or Republican. Vote with your conscience, independent, third party, anything else, and agree with somebody 75% of the time. That's all you can do with the candidate. Agree with their policy 75% of the time. They're worth voting for.
Everywhere you look, the best we can hope for is somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who didn't have the guts to back Bernie Sanders in the primary. That's what we're left with.
You also got to remember who they're running against in 2020. Donald Trump.
They're running against Donald Trump,
and he'll be worse then. So might as well try again.
There's a real chance for progressives to make a real move here and take over the House and Senate in 2 years, if not 4 years, plus get rid of Donnie Tiny Hands. They're not going to do it like this. This is and by the way, Bernie Sanders 100% on board with this crap.
Yeah,
he's for Chuck Schumer being the leader. He's wrong. He needs to leave the Democratic Party and start a third party. If Bernie left and started a third party, the Democrats would either follow him or they'd completely change. Because you can't win without the Bernie wing of the Democratic Party at all. Can't win at all. That's how you hold a politician's feet to the fire. If Bernie would have went third party when he lost the Democratic primary, they would have had to come to him and compromise, and then they could have had a coalition government, and maybe Hillary Clinton would have won being a real progressive. But she didn't. She went to the right, and Bernie went with her, and they lost to Donnie Tiny Hands. And if you think what I'm saying is stupid and crazy, I guess you could do what they said, the smart people, and fucking lose to Donald Trump. Remember that. The smartest people in the world brought you to the richest country in the world that's full of half of poor people. 40% of the black population in prison are black people. You think Donald Trump's racist? The smartest people in the world crashed our economy and then balanced a budget on the backs of working people and then threw them overboard. The Democrats did that. That's the smartest people in the world. Lost to Donnie Tiny Hands Trump. I wouldn't have.
Smartest people don't get into politics. Greed and ego and there's a lot of other things. It's not necessary. I mean, you have to have intelligence, but it's not necessarily the smartest people in the world are there. That's definitely not a thing. Right. So first, want to check out a little U.S. and UK Escalate Russia War Fever with Aaron Mate. He has a fantastic 45-minute segment here. I'm only going to check out the first little bit, and then we will check a response from Tulsi Gabbard today as well. But as I said before, I wasn't going to do the White House press conference because it was all about the U.S. and Russia and Ukraine. And those three names got dropped every single questionnaire, every person, and I just couldn't. The first day when it was one question, and now it's every question, and it just escalates that fast in like a week period here. So
politics at the University of Kent. His books include Frontline Ukraine and his latest, Deception, Russiagate, and the New Cold War. Professor Sakwa, thank you once again for joining me.
My pleasure.
Where do you assess things to be at right now between the U.S. and Russia? As we are speaking, Antony Blinken met with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, a few days ago. There is talk of more talks, and for the first time, the U.S. is saying that it will respond in writing to Russia's demands to address the Ukraine crisis, something that it had delayed or stalled before. Where do you see things headed now? And do you think the prospect of a Russian invasion is any greater than it was when we last spoke?
Well, the response by the United States is due just soon after those Blinken talks, Blinken-Lavrov talks. And when it comes in, possibly in the next few days, I've heard that there is an argument that or Washington has asked Moscow not to reveal the contents immediately, which suggests that there may actually be some movement on the negotiation front, and that the two security treaties which Russia published in mid-December are going to be responded so far in this endless cycle of meetings of NATO, Russia Council, OSCE, and the bilaterals haven't really got anywhere. It's been dealing with the issues at the margins. And what the whole point of this Russian saber rattling at the moment is to try to get the West's attention, above all the United States, which clearly is the leader in all these things. And ultimately, it has succeeded, which of course absolutely enrages those who call it appeasement and what have you. But nevertheless, the diplomatic process is alive. It looks as if there may be some sort of movement in the near future. As for the invasion, I've always been skeptical about it. Simply the force disposition at the moment doesn't look like it. There's about 65,000 troops permanently deployed along the border. In fact, most of them are to the north, Yelnya towards Belarus. There is the equipment for another 45,000 deployed, but the actual troops aren't there yet. They can be moved in quite quickly. But what on earth would Russia achieve with an occupation? I mean, it's been hard enough as the United States to try to manage Afghanistan, and it was had to leave with NATO forces in August 2021. An invasion was not so much on the cards. It was a sort of preemptive, because don't forget, the Ukrainians also got 100,000 forces troops on their side of the border. And of course, after the last second Nagorno-Karabakh war in 2021, Azerbaijan versus Armenia, and with the extraordinarily effective Turkish drones, the Bayraktar TB2. And so there was a lot of, this, in other words, bottom line is that the sort of stalemate which has been on the Russian Western Front for the last 7 years, since 2014, Russia said, look, we've really got to sort this out one way or another. And indeed, the stalemate over the last 30 years over the divisibility of European security, Putin says, and it's not just him, the whole elite, I think, have agreed on this, it's got to be sorted out. And this is where we are today.
You mentioned these two draft treaties proposed by Russia. What are Russia's key demands? And where do you see the U.S. trying to actually reach an agreement? Because Biden keeps saying that taking NATO membership off the table for Ukraine is a non-starter. So in terms of a possible agreement, how would it look based on the position that the U.S. has taken so far?
Yeah, well, that's my point. In all the negotiations over the last few weeks, the United States has offered almost nothing. Okay, no deployment of intermediate nuclear forces, and so it's useful stuff. But as for Ukraine's membership of NATO. We all know it's not on the cards for at least 2 decades. And so I'd have thought, so while they would obviously all sides want to save face, and they wouldn't simply be able to say it's not on the cards at all, we're talking about possibly a moratorium for 25, 30 years. So that's the way I'd see it. And so, because, in my view, this is as dangerous. We're in the middle of a slow burning Cuban Missile Crisis, a slow burn one. And as we know, the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 was resolved, brilliant diplomacy all round, but above all by Jack and Robert Kennedy. They allowed Khrushchev and the Soviet Union to save face, and the deal to remove the Jupiter missiles from Turkey was, it was done very quietly, but at least both sides emerged without being humiliated. And of course, today, that's what we have to find. And I think Biden understands it. I don't think Blinken understands it. I don't think Sullivan does, the security advisor. And certainly the British government doesn't understand that. But I think Biden does. So I've got, I think, 5% chance that there's diplomacy will be fruitful in one way or another.
All right, that was a nice little taste. Absolutely worth a watch. Pushback with Aaron Mate, pretty much worth a watch every episode. So just put it on your calendar, because when Aaron Mate hits you, he's at least coming to you with some information. He's not just he's not hitting you with broad stroke on details. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, had a little something to say about Ukraine.
Tulsi Gabbard might know. Tulsi Gabbard represented the state of Hawaii in the Congress, as well as the United States itself in the U.S. Army. She joins us now to assess what we're seeing. Tulsi Gabbard, thanks so much for coming on tonight. So here you have the government of Ukraine complaining.
And you go on this guy because he allows you on. You don't go on because you're right-wing necessarily.
Because the president suggests that maybe we're not going to go to war next week. How distorted is our system that we can be pushed into a potentially nuclear-involved conflict by Ukraine?
Well, let's look at what's really at the heart of what is motivating the decisions being made by our leaders in this country. And what we have is, unfortunately, Democrats, Republicans, the mainstream media, the Washington elite, essentially in the pocket of the military-industrial complex. And rather than looking out for what's in the best interests of the American people, our national security, our country, they see dollar signs when they look at Ukraine. They see how they can line their pockets, how they can, look tough. How
oil pipelines and perpetual war, I'm guessing. Those are very, very, very profitable. Stopping Russia from producing more, stopping them from getting any pipelines across to Europe, sell their oil outside. Only our allies get to sell oil. Usually what it's about. And we like ramping up war, because that's more weapons.
they can posture themselves in a position where they personally or politically or financially benefit, rather than actually thinking about what are the costs and consequences of these actions and who pays the price. It's the American people and, frankly, the people of Ukraine.
So my guess is that some of the people pushing for war don't actually want a real war with Russia. It would tank our economy in a second, for one thing, and they'd be held responsible. My concern is they're so inept, they so lack fine motor skills, that they're going to talk themselves into getting us into a war inadvertently. They've got a long track record of ineptitude. Are you worried about that?
So does he.
I'm deeply concerned about that, because that's very much the direction that we are headed. You know, Tucker, I look back to early 2017, when then President Trump said, hey, it would be good if we got along with Russia. You remember the reaction to that. Everyone from, you know, Democratic leaders, Republican leaders, people in the mainstream media, they said absolutely no way. There were people in Trump's own administration, warmongers like John Bolton, Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, who outright rejected it and went on their own agenda. And we're seeing the results of this now. We're seeing the result of how we have continued to have these warmongers escalating tensions, putting us in this disastrous position today, leaving us, the American people, with frankly, the responsibility to stand up and say, we will not accept this. We will not be sheep allowing these warmongers in Washington to lead us down this very, very dangerous and costly path.
I'll never forget when you came out as a sitting member of Congress and said, well, maybe we shouldn't actually fight the Russians in Syria. And you were denounced as a Russian agent, also as a racist for not wanting to bomb another Middle Eastern country, which was my favorite attack ever because it was so insane. But you paid a real cost for that. I mean, they attacked you every day you served in Congress over that. So it seems like this is the red line for them. You criticize war, and they won't stop in their effort to destroy you.
And all of these threads we're talking about here point back to that core motivation that sadly does not lie in serving the best interests of the American people, our security.
Well, can't do that for too long. You unfreeze.